Hey everyone, I'm here with Issah, Contractor, a Vancouver session drummer, as well as an amazing bass player, just an amazing musician all around. Thanks so much for coming out.
My pleasure to be here, bro.
So we're just going to talk about what it's like to play shows, what it's like to do sessions, what it's like to work with a lot of interesting personalities, I'm sure.
Totally.
And and just kind of go through your progression and how you got to where you are today, and hopefully the viewers watching can get something out of it and apply it to whatever they're trying to do.
For sure.
So, like, playing professionally, how many years have you been, doing this full time?
Well, it's felt like forever, because ever since I was out of high school, I went to college, and that's like a full-time vibe. You know what I mean? You're immersed in music.
Yeah.
And I only did two or 3 years, and I didn't get my diploma.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I felt like what I wanted to do was just pursue strictly the craft of drumming and the craft of bass playing, and I couldn't find the time to do all the history and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To my regret, and also I would say right now in my life, I'm actually revisiting a lot of the things that they threw at me that I wasn't fortunate enough to cover when I was in college. But anyways, after that college experience, I did a fair bit of practicing in college, and even, let's say, third year in college, I started to play with more players that were considered to be professional musicians.
Yeah.
Like the unit that I'm actually playing in right now, Famous Players. We do tons of corporate stuff, and like Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, corporate stuff out there, and then booked up solid through wedding season and whatnot. So with that unit, I actually did my first gig with them when I was in college. Now after college, I started to play at this house clubs for like 5 nights a week at the Roxy, and that was great exposure, because before that, although I had played quite a bit when I was younger, there was a large gap in my playing experience when I was in high school, and also when I was in college, it was primarily jazz that I was interested in. And so, but I've always loved rock, always loved dance music and all types of music. But I think when I was at the Roxy is really when I got more immersed in popular styles of music. And I think for guys that want to make money off drums or want to make a living off drums, we're hard-pressed to say that those styles aren't the main ones out there that drummers would find themselves working in. So with that being said, that Roxy, the Roxy nightclub, and the 3 nights a week there was a great experience, because also I met a lot of other people in original bands and did tons of original band work, and at the same time I was doing some jazz stuff on the side on bass, and also some free jazz stuff on drums, which is why I remember doing like a free jazz gig and then doing the top 40 gig afterwards. I've done between, let's say, around that time period, I played in a dance hall band with the artist Ross Geronimo, which is pretty cool. And so, yeah, it's kind of been all over the shop. But I would say, to answer your question properly, probably right now, 29, so let's say a good 10 years I've been making a living off music.
And so prior to when you actually started, you're 29.
Yeah.
And so when you were 19, prior to that, like how many hours a day did you spend practicing? Or
yeah, well, okay, like I was lucky. I had a good head start to a lot of people, because I started really young, say like 4 years old, I've been told. And but I remember playing gigs when I was 8. I think the drummer in my dad's band died when I was 9, so I joined that band full time. So I used to play on contract to hotels down in East Africa where I grew up. And that was nice, and just being around there, just being around great musicians and being around a scene, and there was quite a vibrant music scene in Kenya.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that aside, come to Canada, and it's a rat race here, and then you find yourself, thwarted by the normal path of a teenager. And so I stopped playing music when I was in high school for a bit, and I'm happy for that, because a lot of, to be honest, I was very much part of the popular culture. And when I teach, right? So when I see kids coming in, I find maybe I could relate to them more had I done the whole 10 hours a day through high school, like I know some people did.
Yeah.
So that being said, when I was, you're saying maybe the years before I went into college?
When you're 18 or whatever.
Let's say started playing drums again when I was 17, started playing music, and I think at that time I actually started to take the bass quite seriously. So I don't think okay, here's another thing, kind of revelatory about my drum experience. I don't think I knew how to practice, to be honest, with drums And I think like practicing, it's almost like learning how to practice. That's the key, right? So
what to practice
that must be a large portion of what this DVD is on, right? So I think maybe because of the fact that I was a fast learner in drums, had I not picked up the bass, I might not have had the opportunity to really delve into something and have to go step by step. You know what I mean? I always remember how to playing, like, you know, that pattern. You know, like a Bonham type triplet. I always remember being able to do that. So it's hard for me to express to somebody, you know, not that okay, well, step one is this, step one is this, and that's great that, you know, people like yourself can break that down for individuals. But I was going to say that learning the bass really taught me how to practice, so that when maybe when I was around 18 or 19 and I started to practice the drums, around 17 I started to take the bass really seriously. So around 18 or 19 when I started to really get serious into drums, then I found I was making some good leaps and bounds because of the fact that I knew how to practice. So at that point in time, probably at the height of my drumming practice, it was ridiculous, probably like 10 hours a day or something like that. And especially in college, like I would just immerse myself in practice. I would miss classes, and that's the thing about me, like I'm just really driven to the point that, you know, my life will be falling apart, my, you know, limbs are falling apart. In fact, I gained a lot of weight when I was in college. I just started eating a lot, and not so much eating a lot, I would sit there and practice, and then, you know, you're not burning any calories, so I just got you know, fat, and I really didn't care because I just wanted to be a great player. And then what happens is, like, you know, you're not even at the level that you wanted to get to, but then you're out of shape, so you're a fat, mediocre player.
So let's talk about some gigs. Like, tell me about your most exciting gig. Choose one. I know it's going to be really hard.
No, totally. Yeah, you know, I think for the area that I find myself in, the one that comes to mind, sometimes it's just the awkwardness and the little intricate, maybe the nuances of what makes that particular experience memorable. I mean, it's funny. I've played in like let's say this weekend I'm gonna play. Dance floor will be packed for sure. You know, great dining, all that type of stuff. And I'm fortunate because of the unit that I play in. It comes with the territory. Usually, when you do corporate work, it comes with the territory. You eat nice. In fact, people in the corporate world, they often have this term. There's a gig and there's a gige. A gige is the one that starts late, you get fed, and also you get free booze. You know what I mean? So often with this unit, it is a giges. But, you know, that kind of, that's great and stuff. But maybe I would say the most memorable gig is this one wedding that I played. And it was, right now I'm thinking about it, and it was the most funniest thing ever. And I think the humor is kind of what gets me, because that's really makes the moment lasting in your heart. And that particular gig, I think we rolled up and we were playing a jazz set, and I was playing bass on it, and there was a sax player and a guitarist, and it was just it was like something out of a Monty Python skit. I mean, they set us up around this tree, and we were almost like playing homage to this big tree, and then afterwards the wedding planner says, like, can you turn around? So we're like trying to play at the same time as turning around. And I think just that experience. But if I could backtrack again, maybe there's some better moments that I could play. I played in a couple of units that won Seeds, Fox Seeds. That was a great experience. And you know what? The one comes to mind actually was another one comes to mind, and it's probably more along the lines of what you're looking for. It was an all ages show at the Vogue Theatre. And I was playing with this band.
Great venue.
Yes, totally. Great venue. And I had been playing so much top 40 up until then to so many more stiffer crowds, and that all ages show blew my mind. I don't play a lot of all ages shows at all. I rarely get to play for kids, teenagers, and that kind of a vibe. And man, the energy was just astounding.
Yeah, they go nuts.
Oh man, and for me, if I'm not used to that, so it's just like, wow, you're getting so much back, so then you can really feel that you can put a lot into it. I think about those bands like Mariana's Trench, and I actually recently watched, you ever seen Never Say Never with Justin Bieber?
Yeah, I've seen pieces of it.
Crazy audiences, eh? It must be astounding to be, not even to play, just to witness.
Like,
you know
16
what I mean?
years old.
Yeah, just and the thing is, like, I mean, man, when I was 16 and I was just had so much to give. I had so much to shout out to a band. You weren't jaded by anything. Well, not necessarily. You know what I mean? It was just a different way you were taking in. I was taking in music. I felt it on a different level. It was more like feeling it within the construct of your friends, and you know how all the relationships, it almost interplayed into into how I was perceiving the music, whereas now it's just, put phones on, okay, it's a good song, that's a nice lick, or just more breaking down, feeling something, hopefully, but sometimes more these days drawing on my history rather than drawing on the actual environment that I'm in, unfortunately. I got to go out more, maybe.
So drumming highlights, I know you've had I can name a few, I'll let you tell me what are some big drumming highlights that you've had in the past couple of years?
Well, the one that comes to starting from doing that Roxy thing was pretty cool. I remember because it was the first time you get this consistent paycheck, and for a musician that's such a rarity. The one that everybody maybe would jot down right now, who knows me, probably that Roland thing that recently happened.
So you won the...
Yeah, and I'm going in April. Yeah. And those things are nice, especially for your family and whatnot. At least they know that you maybe are on to some sort of a path that you originally wanted to go on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's cool. So, you won the Roland V-Drums competition in Canada. I just want people watching to actually know.
Yeah, Roland, the V-Drums, and now I'm gonna go play in Germany, represent Roland Canada, and that was awesome. Yeah,
that's cool. Okay, let's move into some. Maybe some problems that you see drummers or professional drummers like yourself, musicians, are having. And so, what's the hardest thing about being a professional drummer or professional musician?
I think the best thing for anybody who's in that sort of endeavor, versatility at least comes to mind. You know what I mean? And I think maybe some guys, due to their natural tendencies of not accepting that that the current situation is not as perfect. You know what I mean? Before somebody can change, for example, before somebody can read music, you have to accept that you can't read music, and you have to accept that you have to learn to read music. Not have to, but in your life that it's a necessary thing, and stuff like that. I mean, I find there's a lot of great players for drummers. Some of them don't read, so that the only problem with that is, what if you're presented in a situation which could lead on to something great? You know what I mean? Throw a chart in front of you, and then it's okay. Well, then you don't exactly know how to tangle that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and just maybe being open. I find there's a lot of great players, but just because of the fact that they're not as open, they might not find as many situations to be in, and therefore the situations, if those are to lead one to success, well, the more different kinds of situations you would. And then I guess the other one is just a personality thing. You know what I mean? And maybe, I'm not saying I have these traits, and even as I talk about them, I feel as if they're an ongoing struggle for everybody. You know what I mean? And myself included. And yeah, for sure, personality is one thing, because with the personality, you're met with insecurities and all that type of stuff too. So maybe trying to put all that aside and make sure that your interactions are as genuine as possible. I think that would be the key. I mean, anybody could admit to that most work situations, be it music or unrelated to music, usually those tend to the conflicts, and when stuff starts to fall apart, it's often personality clashes. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably a big one for drumming. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that's great. So what's the biggest mistake that you feel that you've made? What's the biggest thing you could have done, looking back, you could have done differently?
Yeah, for sure. The obvious one would probably just keep it going during high school. Would have been interesting to see would that happen. I always think about what would have happened if I had stayed in Kenya, and therefore, if I had stayed in Kenya, I probably would have kept going playing. But that being said, I don't know if I'm the type to actually maybe sincerely contemplate another existence, just because, first of all, it's probably, it's not possible. And also because I think that a lot of those, say if I had kept on playing, although I might be further on in my career, I don't think I would have been as nice of a person. I don't think I would have been a nice guy, you know what I mean? Because I remember being quite young and I was very arrogant. And I think that a lot of things that took place were very humbling during those years that I stopped playing. And I think above all, and if I'm to die, I'm glad I learned a little bit of humility, right?
That's great. Really good answer, man.
Thanks.
Why do musicians, or maybe you don't think this, I think musicians constantly undervalue themselves and their craft. Why do you think that is? Or do you not? Do you even agree with me?
Oh, musicians undervalue the craft? Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely, dude, there's total truth to that. And I think there's, if somebody was to state another side, I mean, there's truth to that too, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that being said, I think with music, okay, there's a couple of answers that come to mind. Here's one of them. First of all, it's something quite intangible, you know what I mean? So it's not like something that you could present to somebody and
not
say...
Not a hard product like a book or something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And even if it's an album... And then the other thing is the music industry and the music in general and what it requires for us to actually present something through it, for people to be able to make an assumption of that and attach it to us, you know what I mean? And therefore placing value on us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, like that first basic thing is like if I gave somebody a CD of mine or DVD of mine and I'm playing, they would say, wow, he's a great player, and therefore Issah is a, you know, great player, whatever, and because they've seen that, and then, you know, in their eyes, I have more weight. Everything I say has more weight and like value, like you're saying. But I think the one thing that comes to mind is that through music, and I've found, this is my personal answer, I found that it's really hard to express yourself through it without putting things forth that you alienate people. And for example, if you are somebody that's more adept to a more technical side, if you feel that expressing yourself through music 100% from the heart would be in a manner that's more, for lack of a better word, avant-garde or technical, or like progressive rock, for instance. I mean, there's huge value to place on that, but I think some people might not understand that and might be thrown off by it. So I think with music, you're constantly faced with, you know, your own opinion and your own experience with music, and then presenting to that to somebody who has it's very I guess I've just like absolutely given like the most width to an answer which I could express with one word. It's subjective, you know what I mean? Another
value
thing
is subjective.
Yeah,
that's important.
Totally,
You know.
and what you're putting forth is very subjective. You know what I mean? I think like the great players like John Coltrane or something like that. He's like, I mean, just the amount of artistic creativity, the amount of intelligence. You know what I mean? The amount of heart behind a player like that. If we're to play it to somebody who doesn't know much about that idiom, they're gonna just disregard it. You know what I mean? And to them, you know. I mean, Bob Dylan's amazing. As in my mind, just a different kind of amazing, a different kind of artistic integrity, and a different kind of heart, as John Coltrane. But would, you know, more see that. So a lot of people see the world with this black and white thing, and I think that would be a problem when one is trying to find, you know, when one is trying to find value, I guess, from something like music.
So just talk a little about some of the bands that you've been in. Has there ever been a situation where you've gotten, and maybe just tell us a little bit about why it happened, you know, looking back on it, but where you've really gotten in a disagreement or a fight with a band member?
Oh yeah.
And I want to try and analyze why that happened and how it could have been
for sure
solved.
Oh man, like, well, you know what? One of the things was when I got into that Roxy band, I found myself locking horns with the lead singer, and rightfully so on his part, because I was really coming from a like more of a back. Well, I had played covers, and I remember at that point in time, I actually was in a cover band with you ever heard that band Mother Mother?
Yeah.
Well, with Ryan, I was playing in the cover band with Ryan, and we used to play every Wednesday night at the Bourbon. And Brian and Deborah Jean, who was originally in that band, and a couple of other cats, and we all went to VCC at the same time. Okay. So that band was hilarious for a cover band, and I'm pretty sure they would admit it too, because we used to play like, you know, like these tunes which nobody really can, and we used to use them as vehicles for like expressing ourselves through improvisation, and you can't do that with a cover band, you know what I mean? I mean, you can, but it's really not the way to go about it if you want to make some coin.
People want to hear the song.
The chorus, on to the next thing, you know what I mean? So, okay, so like with with Troy Reed at the Roxy, he's just like, what are you doing? He's just like, first of all, like, your kick pattern's changing. Like, I mean, I would play Sweet Home Alabama, and I maybe even play it like boom, cat, ba boom, boom, cat, boom, boom, cat, boom, 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 cat, ba boom, cat, boom, boom, cat, boom, 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 cat, boom, boom, cat, and that's that. Although that's like
not the kick pattern.
That's totally not the kick pattern, and I think just realizing that, okay, like, first of all, realizing the amount of beauty that's in those original songs, realizing where they're coming from, who is listening to them, why they are feeling that from them. I mean, I remember hearing Sweet Home Alabama in Con Air. I mean, you know that movie Con Air with Nicolas Cage? And I remember at the scene, I was like, okay, wow, like that song super impacted me. You know, because a lot of these songs that you play, that I play, I find I'm not really, I'm not from that generation, you know what I mean? Like Summer of '69, like I wasn't in Canada at the time. Although I remember hearing Bryan Adams when I was really young. I remember hearing a lot of, like I heard Run to You. And that song just totally impacted me at the time. But you can't really put that kind of, like that impact, like when you're playing these cover songs, you're playing them to people that felt that for all those songs, you know what I mean? Like Sweet Home Alabama, like Leonard Skinner, like that's huge, you know what I mean? For some people, that's it, you know, and those harmonies, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just realizing that song works because can't. Boom,
so
boom,
you got in a
cat,
fight with
boom,
the lead singer about that, and you're saying you should have just played it.
I was not, I was a kid, you know what I mean? I mean, I guess hopefully I still am, but I was really not really looking at things clearly, and I think that one of those was that trying to see it from his perspective, and maybe as I got older I learned to do that, and I'm really thankful that he was pretty militant, you know what I mean? And
you don't want to be too over the top though, like there has to be some sort of push and pull where, especially when you're doing a lot of the cover stuff. Can't be expected to be a robot because they might as well just put on a track then.
That's a good point.
To be exactly the same.
Totally.
You got to have some of Issah in there, just not all of Issah.
Yeah, totally. Well, you know, but the other thing is that I was like, he'll admit it. Like, I was never ever the type. I was never ever the type to overplay.
Yeah.
Only because. I mean, I think at that point, I've always been interested in, like a lot of drummers out there, in like putting together material and stuff. And then, you know, you realize very fast, like if you're writing lyrics and writing melodies and getting, I think at one time I even tried to sing. Thankfully, I kiboshed that. But I actually got, so getting singers to sing my tunes and stuff like that. And I've been doing that for a long time, for fun, before. And now, hopefully, trying to move into what would be my main source of income. But anyways, doing it for fun back then, you realize very quickly that, hold on, like the last thing that you want is a huge big drum fill over what you thought would be the hook of the song, the chorus, or you know, this nice lead line which you threw in, and it's a really nice, again, like a hook. So yeah, maybe I don't think I overplayed, but I just wasn't consistent with my parts, and I think as time went on, I learned to be a little bit more consistent, and I think that helps that helped a lot. And I think, yeah, man, like just tons of, and other things, I think it's just a lack of preparation. Sometimes I would tend to not maybe listen to the material as thoroughly as I could have. Like I've done, like I can't even remember the amount of like one-off situations I've done. You know, just like you get 12 songs and we got a gig at Joe's apartment coming up on, you know, it's February 26th and it's January 1st right now or something like that, right? And then, you know, me leaving it till, you know, February 25th, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, gotta learn 12 songs. And now, as time went on, my reading got, well, probably a little bit more better for a couple of reasons, but it's really helped in terms of nailing 12 songs, because now I don't really even, I'll listen to them, I'll jot it down, but I won't really know them, but I'll just be sight reading through the gig. It works really well for me because I'm not really the type to actually put the effort into 12 songs if I'm only going to do one gig. You know what I mean? And I know that the difference is going to be like 5%. I'll get, you know, me putting in 95 because I'm concentrating on trying to read through them. And I've done, like, I've read through metal gigs and stuff like that. I mean, it's a bit of a joke sometimes. You show up with the stand, it's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're reading, not reading that, but it's a visual kind of map. You know what I mean? But all that being said, yeah, preparation. I think I would be more successful had I prepared for all of those, because there's no doubt that if I actually sat down and memorized all those metal songs, I would have done a better job, for sure.
Cool. So, just give me a number. I know you have to guess, but how many live shows do you think you've done? Oh man,
that's heavy. Let's say if
like
there's
1,000, more than 1,000.
Yeah, it'd be more than 1,000, right? Because if there's 10, we got 10 years in there.
Yeah.
And then my youth too. Yeah, we're looking at let's say, I think that's a great number, 1,000, because it'd be if it's 100 dates a year.
Yeah.
Well, let's say, how many
sessions, everything, just like live. Well, I guess live shows.
Yeah, we're looking like for the 10 years, I would say a good, like, let's say 1,500 to 2,000.
So, what advice can you give? Like one piece of advice or the most important piece of advice you could give for a drummer looking to start playing shows or getting paid for drumming?
Yeah, for sure. I would think that the first one would be time, time above all else, you know what I mean? Like, and although, a lot of cats play with metronome and stuff like that, I think just having a real consistent sense of time. There's drummers that don't have much else than that, and not that that's a bad thing. No, I'm not even saying that anybody needs anything. This world is free. Everybody can go on and do what they want. But I know that the most important fundamental thing is maybe practicing and trying to harness that inner clock so that when a band is playing, the tempo doesn't vary too much and push and pull and stuff like that. Time, and then maybe just being open to lots of different kinds of grooves, you know what I mean? Just try and restrict that nature in us, which would make people sort of band together and form an alliance, you know what I mean? Because once we have an alliance and a maybe a conformity, then we maybe, I think there is a tendency to sort of lose, you know what I mean? Lose the idea that there's other totally different possibilities, and that is, for example, if you're into rock, maybe just try and branch out, like give Ornette Coleman a chance, find out exactly what it is about that, because you know what, like those gigs actually they're great, you know what I mean? You could get so much out of them personally. You might meet your wife on a free jazz gig, there's so much that can happen if you just leave yourself open and learn about lots of different things. And I think that's one thing that was good about college, is that they actually throw like a ton of information at you, and although you don't get to piece it all together, you have it and it's kind of out there, and you can go pick up snippets and delve into those snippets, because all the snippets are really deep, you know what I mean? But that being said, I think a lot of people don't have that information available to them. Just not so much the information, but the amount of information. They're maybe not necessarily informed about the vastness out there. For example, classical Indian music, you know what I mean? How deep that is, how, like, that's some heavy stuff, you know what I mean? And to just me even talk about it, I feel like I'm insulting anybody who would be well versed in that. Even finding out, listen to Stravinsky, listen to Schoenberg. If it sounds odd to you, maybe find out what about it that is, you know what I mean? At the same time, all these different genres. Latin music, like the depth in that. What about Latin music? I mean, everything, right? Just being open, I think. And also the other thing is that maybe not being afraid to, here's the other thing. I find like my contribution to practicing, what I've noticed is that practicing often sounds quite bad, you know what I mean? And a lot of people maybe don't necessarily know that, you know what I mean? Especially practicing like technique kind of stuff. If it's sounding like it's together, you know what I mean? Maybe it's not being broken apart as much, you know what I mean? By breaking down what we already know and then putting it back together, the more we can break it down, maybe the more ability we'll have to actually construct it the way we want it, you know what I mean?
Cool, yeah. So when it comes to, this is going to get a little more practical, I call this, but just for the people watching, like how do you know how much to charge when someone asks you to do a gig? And I don't know if you want to share like what you would charge if a new band came and said, we want to do a set with like 10 songs, can you make it happen?
Yeah, for sure. Totally, man. I mean, I think a lot of the time it depends on like how much you got on the table currently, and then how much time you have to put towards that, and then how much do you value your time, you know what I mean? If I have a pretty swamped month, and it just makes sense that if somebody comes to me and they say, okay, we need Issah, we really want you, we want nobody else than you, for some strange reason I've convinced them that, you know what I mean? And then they're like, okay, well, if my month is quite busy, it would be justifiably so that I would need a considerable amount more to make more time, you know what I mean? But that being said, I do find myself like so sympathetic to musicians, you know what I mean? So sometimes it's more like what they can afford, but I don't know. I think like say like maybe 100 for like 12 songs at Joe's apartment. That's usually around like 150, I would say.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And so what's and you don't have to share this again, I'm just trying to get practical. What's the most you've ever been paid to play a gig?
$1,000.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I wish it was more, man.
What's the most efficient way you found to get gigs, or to like? I know you're one of the more in-demand guys, and so I don't know if you actively seeking new opportunities or if now it's just come to you. But maybe think back to when you first started to try and get in the scene. Like, what did you do? How did you network? And
yeah, I think, well, the internet is really good for that. Although I don't think it's as good as, like, especially for, like, a scene. A lot of that stuff seems to be face-to-face, you know what I mean? My earlier years, I was putting stuff on the net, man, before, like, when people had to download, you know what I mean? Or wait there. And, like, the chances of them are actually downloading your solo, it's like, nah, that's not going to happen. But anyways, thankfully, YouTube came along. But at that point in time, to be honest, I was playing so much that I never really, I've always been curious, okay, I'm going to get back to the question, but I've always been curious to know what would have happened if YouTube was in my college years, because I think I might have had a more successful YouTube endeavor. But anyways, that aside, can I hear that question again?
What is the most efficient way you found gigs?
I think that landing, okay, cart before the horse, right? The one that I found I got a lot of gigs from was a higher profile thing in the city, like that Roxy. So like just playing in a venue which people can come out to see you, that seems to be working really good. It's funny because I play in a unit right now that we play like tons, but just because a lot of people don't get to see me, you just kind of sort of, you're extricated from the scene, and therefore maybe the phone doesn't ring as much as it did back then. But I think above all else, going out, here's the big one, open mic jams, you know what I mean? Jams, and also maybe just getting together with players, like, okay, and I got a couple now. First of all, like getting together with players, like say like you meet a couple of guys, or you see a couple of guys play, like say if they play with Soulstream or something like that. You really like the way they play. I mean, one thing that I always found useful to me was, okay, people have, like, time is money, you know what I mean? And for the great players, not great players, for really good players who have their lives, then okay, they can't really get together to jam with you, but if they did jam with you, then it might actually potentially lead to something lucrative for you, you know what I mean? What's the best way to get into the scenario? Okay, you can't really say, hey, you know, can I take a lift with your band? Because like, if they don't know you, then it's probably not going to work out. So maybe even trying to, it's almost like advertisement in a way, maybe even try to fork out a little bit, book a rehearsal room, you know, just say, hey, you know, guys, would you want to get together, do some jam? I can pay pizza, or I can, you know, buy you guys drinks or something like that. Or maybe even put together a unit of your own. I've seen some guys that come to town and they'll put together a unit with people, you know, that they've seen and try and get a gig at a certain place. And then they're more like, you know, through that they meet people, you know what I mean? So I think just taking the bull by the horns and either, you know, renting a room and just bringing the players to you rather than, you know, finding the players you want to play with and bringing them to you rather than, you know, hoping that they're going to somehow hear of you, you know what I mean? And also when you bring them together, I always put together a lot of sessions. Like like I said, I always write material. I'm, you know, bound to that direction for better or for worse. So I always found myself meeting tons of people just because you know, you need a viola player. Okay, well, like I don't know any viola players, so bring a viola player out. Next thing you know, you formed a bond. You know what I mean? And if they can hear you play, well, then the next thing you know, when they need a drummer, if they like your style, then they're gonna get you on the session. So I would say, not leaving things to chance, just bringing it together. You know what I mean?
Okay, it's gonna be a quick question. What is the one thing you never go to a gig without?
One thing I never go to a gig without.
Stick bag?
It's gonna be a laughing matter to somebody who really knows me, actually, man. I have a blue bag, and that has everything. It has all my sticks. You know, as shredded up as they are, and it actually has like a couple of different binders for different units. So I'm so like disorganized. I just stuff everything in one bag, and you know, sometimes I'll have maybe like 3 or 4 bands that I'm playing with in that particular month, on and off. You know what I mean? So as long as I have that bag with the sticks, binders, and all that stuff, you know, you can't go too wrong. You know what I mean? You know, you can get drummed, but your material, if you don't have your charts, then that's not going to be happening, man. You know what I mean?
Cool. So just to kind of close it up here, is there any like final tips that you can give them, or final words to send them on their way, whether it be positive or negative?
I got it, man, for sure. For me at least, it'd be probably like be drawn towards the reason why like be drawn towards the art. You know what I mean? The art of it. You know what I mean? And find the passion through that art, you know what I mean? Find the passion towards like what you consider to be art, you know what I mean? Expressing yourself, you know what I mean? If I think that's like the goal, you know what I mean? If you can always go towards that, I think everything else falls in line, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. There's a lot of things that can kind of, I can't use that word too much, thwart us from that path, you know what I mean? But I think that at the end of it all, and I know this for certain because I'm somebody that, I don't watch hockey, you know what I mean? I'm actually quite strange to be around, I can imagine. I mean, I play gigs, and sometimes just because of my nature, I just want to go sit by myself, so I do that. I just go sit by myself, you know what I mean? But at the end of it all, I've noticed that because I'm very sincere about my path, and very sincere about the direction that I'm going towards, which is, I love music, and that's why I'm here. If I didn't love music, I'd be doing something else. And I put that music at the forefront. I don't drink when I play. I never drink because I want each gig that I play to be an experience which I could learn from, you know what I mean? And I just know for certain that, you know, other things, other instincts start to take over me when I have one drink, you know what I mean? And it's not going to stop at one drink, you know what I mean? So by the end of the night, I'm not going to be using that experience to practice, you know what I mean? And even if that's just playing, you know, these kind of beats for the rest of the night, I mean, I find those as hard as some of the more complex stuff. Like that's for certain, right? So anyways, point being is that I find as long as you're very certain about the path that you're going along, other people, they respect that, you know what I mean? And then it doesn't even matter who you are or where you come from or, you know, what situation you're in. I think people are drawn towards that.
Cool. Well, thanks, man, for coming out.
Pleasure,
taking the time.
man.
Really appreciate it.
So much fun, man.
Yeah, I know the stuff you said is going to hopefully help a lot of people.
Thanks.